Our next topic that we're going to discuss is sales. Sales is something that affects us all, especially as a startup, whether you're a programmer or whatever your role is in the company. When you're first starting, it seems like everyone's trying to sell. So we wanted to get someone here to talk to us about that today. His name is Lilley. He's the co-founder of CTS, a regional IT consulting firm headquartered in Birmingham. We've got offices in Atlanta, Charlotte, Chattanooga, Mobile. Larry is also an adjunct professor at the University of Alabama at Birmingham in the School of Business and the School of Computer Science. So please welcome Mr. Larry Lilley.
Hey guys, I've got OLD, so I travel with my own stool. I'm supposed to talk to you guys today about sales in a startup. And it's a topic I know a little bit about, having been the first salesperson for CTS many years ago, back in the mid-90s. And sales is one of those things that, you know, I think if we did a show of hands, let's do a show of hands. How many people here fancy themselves a good salesperson? Show of hands. All right, I got one hand up over here. Arrogant. No, I'm joking. There are a few hands up, right? Why not too many hands? Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to miss you up there. Why so few hands? Okay. What is sales? It's a black art, right? It's something that so many of us are somewhat afraid of. All right. By show of hands, how many people in this room are married? All right. So everybody in this room that raised their hand that's married, how many of you raised your hands and said you were a heck of a salesperson? Right? Okay, one guy in the back. Right? That's the greatest sales pitch you can put on, right? You've convinced somebody to make a commitment that in theory lasts a lifetime. But we don't view sales that way. We view sales most of the time, most of us view sales as something that we're intimidated by. Right? I submit to you that most of us view sales as something that we're intimidated by for the same reason that we can be successful as entrepreneurs. Right? Why? It's a fear of failure. It's what makes you successful. It's what makes you get up every single day, both feet hit the floor, and go out to blaze a new path. Why? Because you refuse to go home and say you couldn't do it. Right? But it's that fear of rejection that makes us somewhat afraid of sales. So what is it? I'm going to talk today a little bit. I have been an adjunct professor for a number of years. And I'll do my best not to make this a lecture. I'd like it to be interactive. But most people group sales and marketing together, but there's an absolute distinct difference. That if you take one thing away from today from my presentation, which by the way, I mean, what I'm following here this morning has been fantastic. So you guys have really got an opportunity to learn from folks that have really been successful in this community, and it's really a privilege to be here. But if you take one thing away from my presentation, it's how to maximize your time and focus your marketing efforts and your sales efforts appropriately. So what is sales? Somebody give me a definition. Mario, I know you're not afraid. Give me a definition.
Convincing somebody to buy your product.
Convincing someone to buy your product. Somebody give me another definition.
Converting awareness to revenue.
Converting awareness to revenue. I like them both. Okay? But sales is a process, in my mind. It's a service, right? When you think about how you got married. Okay, there was a marketing step. You took a shower, I hope, before you went somewhere. Hopefully you ironed your clothes or you dressed appropriately for the vibe of the event or whatnot. But somehow or another you caught the attention of someone else's eye. Right? Either that was through a friend introducing you, maybe it was a church function, maybe you were just out of the bar, maybe it was online, I don't know. But somehow or another, something about you in that marketing stage got someone to move from status quo to taking notice. That's when marketing ended in that process. Not completely, but the early stages of marketing ended. And then the sales process took over. All right, what's the difference? Marketing is a one-to-many activity. You're at a social event, you're dressed appropriately, you're driving a nice car, whatever it is that you're trying to do to convey success, that you're an ideal mate, that you're someone that someone could spend the rest of their life with, right? You're presenting yourself in that fashion to get someone to go from status quo to noticing. And once that notice takes place, you move out of a one-to-many type of a situation to a one-to-one. Unless you're one of those guys and girls that dates 60 people at the same time, then you're constantly in a one-to-many state, and I don't really know how you manage it. But at any rate, you move to a one-to-one process, okay? But sales is a service by which you take someone that's just recognized that there is a potential need until they get to a commit stage. And we'll talk a little bit about that cycle in a few minutes. I'm pretty sure, how many people in here are in software or IT? Okay? If I say, I've got an idea, I want you to build something for me. How many people think that they can shepherd me through that process of a vision that I have to an end product? Right? Sales is no different. It's no different, guys, and it's not something to be feared. Once you get comfortable with the fact that you are providing a service, you can be successful in sales. And it's absolutely critical in the early days. Right? Tracy Como stood up here a little while ago and talked about a stage in her company where they had to turn away business. That's an indigestion stage, and we'll talk about that. There are different stages that companies go through. But in the early stages, you take every deal that darkens your door. And you have to, right? Because starvation is that first stage. You've got to get revenue. And the only way you can do that is through sales. All right, so let's talk a little bit about that. What is your most important asset when you start a company? You? What aspect of you?
Reputation.
Personality, reputation? Time. Right? How do you divide your time when you're starting a company? Mine is the classic story. 3 guys in an apartment, $20,000. We can do this. What do we want to do? God, I don't know. What do we want to be when we grow up? Not poor, right? But what do you want to do? What do you want to be? You have to divide your time based on your goal, right? We all spend a lot of time dreaming. What will life be like when X happens? What will life be like when X plus whatever happens? But you've got to divide your time between product development, right? A lot of you guys might be building products. You've got operational issues you've got to figure out. Where are we going to have an office? How am I going to pay for it? I've got to put together some marketing material, and I've got to find some way to connect with somebody so that they're interested in buying my product or my service. Then I've actually got to go complete a sale. And if you're like I was 25 years old, right? I didn't know the first darn thing about sales and marketing, and I submit to you that I probably still don't know about it. I would fail an exam at college, right? But what I do know is if you realize that time is your most valuable asset, and you try to focus it so that you get a broad enough sweep of qualified parties to receive your message from a marketing function, it greatly increases your odds of closing deals when you're in a one-to-one sales cycle, which is a far more expensive process. So my goal here today is really to talk to you guys about some of the lessons that I learned, and we'll talk a little bit about that. So we started CTS, 3 guys in an apartment. I was 25. Bill Fenton, one of the other co-founders, was also 25. He had 10 grand. I had 10 grand. We had been in college. We were college roommates. Steve, who Tracy mentioned earlier, was one of our college professors. The 3 of us put this thing together. And Bill and I were the initial capital. We had the whopping $20,000. And we had gotten used to living on a shoestring budget because we had just come out of college. It was ramen noodles, it was macaroni and cheese, and God, y'all don't get sick right here before lunch, but we would add a little bit of tuna to it, right? Because you had to have some meat, and you could mask the flavor of tuna pretty good with the good brand, Kraft or the Velveeta mac and cheese. You really couldn't do it with the lower end stuff, right? So the 3 of us were in an apartment, and by process of elimination, I got selected to be the sales guy, okay? Wasn't that I was capable or knew what the heck to do, but what did I do? I did what so many of us do, which was I grabbed the yellow pages, I grabbed the telephone, and I wrote a script. And I started dialing for dollars. We had 2 things we offered. We had a product we had built called On the Clock. I'll talk a little bit about timing in a sales cycle in a few minutes about that. And we also had the services that we wanted to offer. We wanted to be an IT consulting firm. So I picked up the yellow pages and I picked up the telephone, and I called and called got hung up on and hung up on and hung up on, and finally, I would get a meeting. 1 in 100 calls, I'd get someone to convince me, or I would convince someone that they needed to take my meeting. And this was a bit of a tricky game, right? Because you're leaving messages. And so what do? Right? We're all in startup mode. You try to act bigger than you are. So you play the name game. My formal name, Joseph Lawrence Lilley Jr. Yeah, this is Joseph Lilley. I'm calling for Pete Smith. Will you have Pete give me a call? My number is such and such. So I'd answer the phone. This is Larry. Oh, you want to speak to Joseph? Well, I'd immediately know how that call was inbound. Was it that I left a message? Same thing. Bill Fenton is William Eugene. So he got to play 3 names. Right? He was Bill, he was William, and he was Eugene. Right? So all of a sudden we looked like a 6 or a 9 person company when we were only a 3 person company. And that was on purpose. And it would also enable us the ability to track how we got leads that led to actual physical meetings. Now what happened in the physical meetings, I hate to say, I had one suit, it got cleaned once a year, whether it needed it or not back then. I was not very successful at closing initial business, and I came to learn through a lot of mistakes about really understanding and targeting your audience. But we did all of those things, but it was terribly inefficient. Why? Somebody. That's a marketing function.
Need networking.
Okay? It's a one-to-one type of an approach. Right? I'm dialing, I've got you on the phone. That's not a one-to-many model. Right? I'm already in the sales cycle, and it's terribly inefficient and it's expensive. So, eureka moment happened back in 1996 for us. Back then, there was an organization in town here called the DPMA. Anybody else old enough to remember the Data Processing Managers Association? Okay. I'm really going to date myself here, but we went in and we gave a presentation on client-server computing. Right? In the mid-90s, it was all the rage. Everybody was talking about it. Very few people were doing it. The few that were doing it weren't doing it so well. Kind of sounds like high school romance, doesn't it? Right? So that's what was going on. So we gave a presentation to the DPMA, and all of a sudden, we were standing room only. It's the most nervous I've ever been. Our first speaker today described himself as an absolute introvert. Right? I consider myself the same. How many people in this audience think that introverts are good salespeople? You don't. It's just not how we're programmed to think. We think of a booming personality. An extrovert as somebody that's really, really good and methodical and does great at sales. But anyone that's run a company has to be a hell of a salesperson. They've got to convince people, as Tracy pointed out, you've got to convince somebody of your vision and get them to buy into it. Okay? To share a portion of their career, to put their livelihood in your hands. If you want to raise capital, that's a sales pitch. The business plan guides you. Okay? Terribly inefficient, but at the DPMA, all of a sudden we had standing room only, 125 or 130 people. We had an audience that was sitting there in awe as I talked about 2-tier architectures. Bill talked about 3-tier architectures. We talked about the intricacies of client-server computing, and all of a sudden we got a project. We got our first enterprise account in Birmingham, Alabama. We literally went from $0 a year in revenue to $250,000 a year in revenue, and it was, oh my God, what just happened? How did that happen? Next thing you know, what do I want to do? We want to teach. Public speaking. And you've got to embrace that, guys. As you start, guys and girls, as you start and launch your companies, there's a lot of ways that you can get your brand and your message out there. But if you can establish yourself as an expert in an area and have demand coming to you, it is a fantastic use of your marketing time. I'm going to change gears just a little bit. We'll talk a little bit about what the sales process is. How do people go about buying? And we talked a little bit about, you caught the eye of your spouse or your significant other, right? That's that marketing. So what I look at is I look at this as it's a 5-step process. Those of us that build software, we can follow a methodology, if you will, on building software, and we follow steps. It's the same thing in sales. Your prospect is in what we call status quo, right? They're in operations mode. They're doing something. Bam, there's some event that makes them stop what they're doing and they move into a recognition phase. And that recognition phase, that's the second phase in the process. What is it? It's just recognition that there is an opportunity to do something, either through a product or a service, that will either make them more efficient or make their lives better. Right? They move out of a recognition phase immediately into evaluation. Right? So they're in an evaluation stage, and that's where they're comparing alternatives. Then they move into, right? They've got to resolve concerns. I've got concerns. What are those concerns? Will this product or service meet my needs? Do I have enough budget? Is my timeline acceptable? All of those things before they move into a commit stage. And you have to know where your prospect is in that process. And that's why it's an expensive process. It's a one-to-one type of a thing. I'll give you a great example. And it's one of the pitfalls I want to talk about. When we built our product, I mentioned earlier we had a product called On the Clock. It was what we considered to be pretty advanced in the day, barcode-driven technology. It was used to keep track of people's time and activities, and we had a target audience of accounting firms. It was absolutely where we were going with it. Anyone that has to keep track of time and then they have to bill based on the hour, this is a good product for them. So it's November, we're building it, we're trying to get ready to launch it. Not ready. It's not ready. We need to have a true client server, 3-tier architecture as opposed to a 2-tier peer-to-peer network model because Microsoft just announced the launch of Windows NT. So all of a sudden, I mean, I'm dating it, I know. I mean, back then it was 3.1. So we had true back-end server operating system all of a sudden. So we kept working on our product, and we kept working on our product, and we kept working on it. And lo and behold, it's March, and it's finally ready for launch. So I put on my one stinky suit and set out and dialed every single accounting firm I could get on the phone to try to set up a demo. And what happened? It's tax season. How successful was I going to be? There's no chance. Right? Am I really going to get the lion's share of a partner's attention during tax season? Of course not. Right? And so the only real option that we had was essentially to wait until post-September after the extensions were filed and all of those things so that we would have a chance, a viable chance to launch that product. And it fell by the wayside. And it's one of those pitfalls we can all fall into, specifically if we're building technology. The product's never good enough. It's never ready. Most of the time I submit that people have a sales issue more so than a technology issue. All right. I hit on those things. How many people have sent a proposal that goes into a black hole? Get no response? Okay. How many people have sent a proposal and the next day you get a response, thank you for your proposal, we've chosen another vendor? In both of those cases, what happened? You sent your proposal too early or you sent it too late. Right? If you had a prospect that was just in the recognition phase and you submitted a proposal, that's a later stage. It went too early. Vice versa. You've got somebody that's resolving concerns. They've made a selection. Somebody up the food chain within their organization has said, have you gotten a couple competitive bids? Ooh, no. Let me call CTS and get a bid. All right, I need a bid. I just need it fast. Email it to me. Just email it to me. No, I don't want you to give me a presentation. I just need a proposal. Right? How many times have we heard that? You're wasting your time. You cannot let your product or service be commoditized. You have to believe in it, and you have to believe that it's not a commodity. And as such, you have to make your prospect invest and engage in the same way that you're investing and engaging. Once they're invested in the process and absolutely walking through the cycles, through the steps of the 5-step cycle, then they're invested, they're committed, they get further down that cycle, and you know that you're in sync. Looking at the time here, guys, I've got a few, I've got about 6 minutes left. Let's talk a little bit about some of the pitfalls, if you will. When you're in early stages of running a company, you've just started your company, congratulations. You're starting. Might not be initially, but the first 6 to 9 months, money will start to run thin. You start looking for ads in Sunday's paper. Gosh, I hope Publix puts chickens on sale for 29 cents a pound this week. Because 3 of us can split one chicken and that's $1 a meal, and if we get some beans and rice, I mean, wow. We could literally eat for 2 days on $1, right? I mean, that's where you end up. Right? Tracy talked about keeping your eye on that island, okay? When you're in the early stages, it's about starvation. Right? Then you move, you get some traction, you get some success with sales, and you move into an indigestion stage of your company. Right? That's where you have more work than you can deliver. And this is absolutely critical. Right? I learned many years ago, I went to a conference with one of our clients, and it's a pretty ironic story, right? It's a pretty ironic story. When the client invited me to go, I was delighted to go, and I went to one of the breakout sessions, and the topic was, don't have terrorist clients. And I realized in the middle of the presentation that the client that had invited me to go to this was a terrorist client, so I had to fire him, which was a very interesting moment. But it's something that you guys have to recognize. Don't spend all of your time chasing a client you can't afford to have. Okay? So as you move from the starvation stage into an indigestion stage, that's when you absolutely, positively have to prioritize your customers. Not all customers are created the same. Not all deals are created the same. Right? What is a terrorist client? Someone that basically says, this solution has to do all of these things, I can't spend more than this, and I got to have it tomorrow. Right? You get the emergency phone call, I've got a crisis on my hand. I need your best team, I need them over here, pull them off of whatever they're doing. And then that same client argues with you about how much you want to charge them. Right? So you pull people, you pull resources, whatever, off of clients that never complain, that allow you to make good, healthy margins and grow your business and continue to foster an ecosystem of entrepreneurialism in your home city, to put them on a terrorist account and let your customers have it, or let your competitors have it. You're far better off letting your competitors have that client. At that point, when you start to mature out of that indigestion phase, you'll have to make a decision. You've got to move to a professionally managed organization, and that means professional sales. Right? And when you talk about pitfalls, one of the biggest and most important decisions that you can make as an entrepreneur is who is it that is going to run your sales function. Right? We have been very fortunate at CTS. We've had people that have spearheaded our sales function that have gotten it, that delivered results every step of the way. Right? We've been through a couple of different people to spearhead that function, and it's worked out great for us in every single case. However, I can tell you that us having been a part of the incubator, and I'm going to touch on that here in one more minute too, we got to see other companies not live that. We also got to see through our own mistakes when we made bad hiring decisions on big gun sales folks. This is a key decision for you. Right? How many people think that the guy or girl, and I'm going to trivialize this, but the guy or girl that sells Hondas right now has any problem hitting quota? How many of you think that the person who sells either Toyotas or Hondas today has a problem making quota? Of course they don't. Gas is $4 a gallon. Right? If you've got a vehicle that gets 40 miles to the gallon and is reliable and is a fairly inexpensive vehicle, they're going to fly off the lot regardless. Right? When gas hits $5 a gallon, they're going to hit quota too. You've got to analyze the results that a person has produced based on the market that they're in and the factors associated with that market. There are people in here that have run successful businesses, and I'm looking at several of them. The last person out the door in a downsizing is who? Person that closes business. If I've got a Top Gun sales guy, they are not leaving my building without me fighting until the bitter end. Why? Because that's my lifeblood. Yet, I get candidates all the time that were gold, 200% of quota for 14 years in a row. Got caught in the downsizing. Don't know that I buy that. Right? Don't know that I buy that. I'm getting a hell of a sales pitch that they're qualified for this job, but you've got to be very careful about that decision, and I cannot stress that enough. Ego. Who's the highest paid person in the building? In any company, who is the highest paid person? Top salesperson. It's not the CEO. You founded the company, you put your blood, sweat, and tears, you borrowed money. You begged everybody you knew to get an extra $100 so that you could afford to do something, so that you could start a company and create a job. You cannot let your ego get in the way. You can't do it. I mean, I always fall back on an example. For me, it's always better, I look at it and just say it very simply. If I make $1 a year and you make, I don't know, you want to come work for me, and you want to make $100 a year. Well, if I can pay you $100 a year and increase my pay to $2 a year, why wouldn't I do that? It'd be foolish on my part not to, but ego gets in the way. So you can't let that happen to you as you grow your company. And same thing with control. I give an illustration, right? If you go down to the beach and you reach both hands into the sand and you pick them up like this and you're holding on, clenching your fist, how much sand can you hold? Not a bunch. But if you reach down like this and pick it up, you can hold a heck of a lot more. Right? You cannot go into this saying that I've got to be in control. You have to embrace and let other people, lift other people up, the people that you hire, and give them an opportunity to succeed. Let them fail softly. All right. Last thing I just want to say is, most of the speakers today have already touched on it a little bit. I think it's very, very important that I say this. We came out of the incubator. We went into the OADI program that predated the Innovation Depot. Susan Matlock took over. We probably had 40 or 50 employees when Susan took over. And what she's done at the Innovation Depot is simply incredible. It is the sort of thing, I'm not up here to promote, but I've got to say that, you know, when I look around, G.T. Laborde, okay, David Gray, Tracy Cummings, all of us were in an incubator together, right? And what you gain from being in that type of a setting is that you get to feed off of the success and the momentum and the energy of everybody else in the incubator, right? And you also get to see what doesn't work for other people. It is a wonderful, wonderful community. It's an opportunity, and I encourage you to really, really explore that. And I wish you all much success and much luck. I hope I've added a little bit of value today. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Larry. Well, we have given you lots of coffee. Now we're going to give you food. So we're going to go outside and have lunch. Not outside. Outside these doors, there is barbecue from Jim and Nick's that will be served. There are, I believe, vegetarian options if that's the case for you. But come back in here. You can eat in here. I think you can eat out there, eat anywhere around this area. We'll be back in a little bit and we'll just corral you in when it's time. So have fun.